Hi, here I'd like to tell a little story that sort of gives a bit of insight into how important the Neikong arts of Lohan Rui and Wu Ji, which were the parent arts of Yan Xiaogong, how important they are, and also give a bit of insight into the history of our Chi Kim Tong lineage, of the Shaolin arts. Now, this incident happened sometime during the 1930s, the early 1930s. The Second World War was still on, and China was fighting against the Japanese. Now, Grandmaster Chi has now, after fighting in the Big Knife Brigade, and they were using the Da Dao, those broadswords, fighting urban guerrilla warfare with the Japanese in Shanghai. And that battle was over, and he was back down to his hometown of Xiamen, which is a major port city in Fujian province, where his parents' homes were. Now, the other part of the story is about Shaolin Temple. So by this time, the Southern Shaolin has already been destroyed. A lot of the monks have sort of disbanded and, vanished into various places. But there was this one old monk. His name was Yit Sim, and he was residing on an island off Xiamen. It was a small island, it has a temple in it, and behind the temple was a cave. He was residing in the cave. Now, what's so special about Yit Sim is he was the custodian, or rather the holder of the lineage of the arts of Wu Ji and Lohan Rui. These were the two very special, I would say, Neikong arts of Southern Shaolin. And at that time, when he was in the cave in the temple, he had one or two disciples with him, and these were young monks who were not very experienced. So he was looking for a more experienced and someone who was more well-versed in the internal martial arts, so that he can pass these arts on too, because he deemed it very important not to be lost with him if he passed away, but to pass it on to someone who could carry on the art, So he heard about Grandmaster Chi's reputation. So he sent his monks out to seek him out, So this young monk, who was quite big size, went to Xiamen a few times to look for Grandmaster Chi in his parents' home, and a few times he wasn't there. Finally, after the third or fourth attempt, he managed to contact Grandmaster Chi at home, and he officially challenged him, and said, "I've been sent to my master to challenge you to see if you are worthy," and he didn't say more about that. So Grandmaster Chi, by that time, I think having been a very seasoned martial artist as well as a combat veteran, has been used to challenges. So he said, okay, let's do it in the backyard. So in those days, the old houses has a small backyard, and there would be a big door frame, that led into the backyard, And one of these was big wooden doors, with about very high, large wooden doors. So they sparred in the courtyard, and Grandmaster Chi managed to land a palm strike onto the big monk. So he flew backwards, fell against the wooden door, and the whole door frame crashed down. So the big monk, instead of getting angry or aggravated, he immediately jumped up and knelt down, and he saluted Grandmaster Chi and said, "I found you at last." And then he explained that my master, who is the old monk Yit Sim, wanted to meet up with you and invite you to go to the temple so that he can pass the arts of Wu Ji and Lohan Rui to you. So Grandmaster Chi obliged the monk, and he visited the island. And when he met the monk Yit Sim, who was at that time already about 80 years old, and he was half blind, so Yit Sim said to Grandmaster Chi, offered him one finger and said to him, "If you can move my finger, there's nothing I can teach you." And at that, Grandmaster Chi could not move the monk's one finger. He grabbed it, couldn't move it. So he stayed on and learned from Yit Sim for over a period of 3 years. And he sort of traveled back and forth, to the island to learn from him. Now, I think this shows a few things, that It Sim has deemed this art so important that he must pass it on to someone who was worthy. And number two, by this time, Grandmaster Chi has already mastered the arts of Five Ancestors and probably Wu Mei, and been a seasoned combat veteran. And yet, despite his skills and ability, he could not move the finger of that one monk. So it goes to show that how high level, the art of this monk was, you see, and that these arts were very important. Now, I'd like to also mention one thing. In some of my earlier interviews, I mentioned that the arts of Wu Chi and Lohan Rui are no longer available, or rather the practitioners or those who knew it were either not teaching or, had passed away. More of the latter, in fact. But I'm glad to inform everyone that I managed to locate a pocket of the arts that when in my last trip to Europe. And what happened was back in the 80s and 90s, Grandmaster Chi did travel to Europe, to Switzerland, to teach a group of people there, the Wu Chi, the art of Wu Chi, and Lohan Rui. And I met one of these gentlemen who was among the original group that learned Wu Chi in Switzerland. He's now residing in Berlin. His name is Otwin Lewis. And he was so kind as to come and meet us when we were in Berlin to do a seminar, and we had a nice long conversation, and he explained more of the history of how he learned Wu Chi and Grandmaster Chi's visit to Switzerland. So I'm glad to inform everyone that the art is, a pocket of this art is still alive and well, and that I will be making a lot of effort to try and learn more of the Wu Chi so that we can preserve it.
TheMarshallMan.com